Welcome, welcome. Dr. Stephen Hobbs here from the Wealth Movement. You are listening in to the Wellther series. It's people who I've identified who are awesome at their life and their business, and I think they have something to share with the world. In other words, being for the world. And I've invited Jana along today for the journey because I wanted to get her to help us understand what we call the EMT, not emergency medical technician, more about entrepreneur, manager, and technician. So I'm going to open it up, but what I'm going to do is to get Jana just to introduce herself a little bit more about who she is, because I met her, about a year or so ago, with a platform, an education platform, and then we became accountability buddies. And I've just gotten to know this wonderful woman, and she has a lot more to share about who she is and what she's doing. And then that story, we're going to dive in and take a look at this EMT conversation. So with that, Jana, can you just share a little bit more about your background so we have a sense of who you are?
For sure. First of all, thanks for having me, Stephen. I'm really excited to be here and kind of share my story and maybe plant a few seeds or connect some dots for some people around, this crazy life as an entrepreneur and what it all kind of means. So I'm actually a farm girl from a small little town in Saskatchewan. And so came to university here in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, where I currently live with my husband and our three boys, and did a business degree, started working for transportation company, moved on and worked at the university here in higher education. And at that point, decided to further my education, did my master's in business admin, and kind of shifted gears to more of HR consulting, of which I worked in for about 13 or so years. What I realized kind of as I was going through this part of my life, I also started to deal with some health issues. And as this was just when I was newly married, a young 22-year-old, was experiencing a lot of pain, digestive pain, undiagnosed digestive pain, had like a grocery list of medications that I had to take. And I just thought, well, that's just how things are going to be. It's funny because I'm a big pop culture. That's my jam, my guilty pleasure. I love pop culture. I love the Kardashians and TMZ and all those celebrities, like getting a glimpse into their life. And I actually saw Madonna on the cover of Shape magazine in 1999, a long time ago. And it had the word, what I thought was pilots, kind of written across it. And I was like, what is this pilots? And so we didn't even have Google then. So I took our leisure guide and I flipped through to find a pilot's class, of which I realized after was a Pilates class. Oh. I found a class at our local leisure center and started taking a mat class twice a week. And what I started to notice was about 6 weeks in, my pain started to lessen. By 8 weeks in, I was taking less of my medication, or I was stretching out time between medication. And what had been undiagnosed for so many years, and I couldn't explain why this form of movement started to help me, but it was. My parents actually had an appointment for me following Christmas that year at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. Long story short, we didn't end up going to Minnesota. I was able to, with this simple form of movement, changing the way my posture was, changing my understanding of how the body worked through this form of movement. I changed the look of my body, the function of my body. And I knew then that I needed to learn more about what this form of movement was. So we started having our family at around that time. And I started digging into, where can I take courses? And so I actually found a training studio in Phoenix, and the woman that owned the studio was coming to Saskatoon, of all places, to do her 18-month training course. I took it at that point only for the sole purpose of me learning more to pass on to my husband, our boys, and maybe my family. And that didn't actually, that didn't actually happen. I started teaching mat classes out of my home in 2008, actually quit my job at the consulting firm that I was working at, started doing my own consulting, and taught Pilates in my basement, did my business consulting upstairs. And people started to seek me out. They heard about this woman in Arbor Creek that did this Pilates, and she helped them with their back, or she helped them with their headaches. And my business, which was at that point still very much a hobby and a passion, started to grow into something more. And within about 16 months of that point, I was teaching about 16 classes a week out of our home, about 25 hours of privates. And I realized that there was, actually, I didn't realize it. My husband said to me one night, he said, Jana, this is no longer a hobby. We need to get this business out of our home, because we're breaking all the city of Saskatoon home-based business laws with parking and traffic. And neighbors were joking they were going to start charging us for parking on their driveways. And so that's exactly what we did. My husband left his job, came over and took the consulting business over, and we opened our first studio in September of 2010. The jump from out of our home to a studio was a big one, but the cool thing was I had just spent over a year and a half nurturing a really solid foundation to my business. So it didn't matter if I was in my basement or whether I was 7 minutes away at my studio. I still took a leap, yes, because now we had overhead and we had employees, but I had a solid foundation of people that already had bought into what I was doing. And so that's where, from like that, the jumping off the cliff on entrepreneurial piece, we were very, I guess, organized, and we, in a very concerted way, just outgrew. It's like, when you outgrow your house or you outgrow a pair of pants, you just have to go somewhere new. And that's what we did. About 2 years into that experience, our business was growing. And one thing I realized really quickly was the clients that I was referring out to chiropractic, physiotherapy, massage, and that were doing Pilates with me, we were seeing some fundamental changes in these people and their quality of life, the way they moved, the way they just, existed. And so at that point, I got the little seed planted in the back of my head that I couldn't be the only one in this city that believed in an integrative approach to health and wellness. Something different than what the fitness industry was saying, the go hard, the go home. Something different than the medical kind of traditional medical field was saying, that let me prescribe and diagnose, or diagnose and prescribe. And so we fell somewhere in the middle of that. So what I started doing was building a new business, a business that under one roof had movement and therapies that clients and patients could come. We become their advocates. We help them navigate our system. And did we have everything, or would we have everything? No, but we would have a lot of what would be posture and fitness issues, a lot of our knee pain, back pain, headaches. Yes, some of it is medically diagnosed, but so much of those people sitting in a clinic waiting room, waiting for their knee pain prescription or their back pain prescription, if they just were educated on a little bit of a different strategy towards their body, their movement, their lifestyle, a lot of that could be taken care of. And that's what we did. So in 2015, we went from 2,200 square feet to 9,000 square feet. We opened up Lead Pilates and Lead Integrated Health Therapies. And that's been my passion project. That's what's been going on for we just had our 3rd year anniversary a few months ago. Do we still have a ways to go? Yeah, we do. We still have some growth. There's little bumps in the road, and we learn from them and we carry on. But what I can tell you is that we have impacted thousands of lives, and not just the people that walk through our door, but the people that those people have, maybe friends and family that don't live in Saskatoon, that they like, oh, you should check out Pilates, or I did this, or I did that. And so we work way too hard in this life, choosing a path, a career, being parents, not being parents, wherever we end up, that there's a point where we need to start really enjoying the time that we have invested in our life. And if at that point, we're just starting to deal with those headaches and the back pain and the sleepless nights that have taken their toll on us, there's a bit of a gap between what we deserve and where we're at. And that's really what Lead goes to, kind of bridges that gap. And that's where I met you, Stephen, when I started thinking about how can I reach more than just the people in the Saskatoon area. that's when I brought the Meta District on board. And that's my new online platform for health and wellness. And yeah, so that's kind of, in my really quick nutshell, a little bit about me, a little bit about my journey, and how, went from a really comfortable job at a big institution that would have been very easy to just go year after year after year and, earn that paycheck and then earn the pension. But growing up in an entrepreneurial environment, both my husband and I, there was this magnetic pull that doing something for yourself could be pretty amazing.
Right. Well, there's a lot to unpack in that introduction, folks, because from an EMT point of view, this entrepreneurial manager technician storyline, what Jana has been able to give us is a lot of insights around where you start. And often you start from a technician's perspective, right? We talk about, well, it's what I love to do, it's what I want to learn, it's what I want to share, right? Is that story. And then as you build it out, you start to go, hang on a minute, there's a way I have to manage the systems. Then I have to work on those systems, an entrepreneurial way of doing things. So when we first thought about doing this Wellther series, I asked Jana, let's unpack the story of the EMT, right? And she said, yeah, great, let's jump on. And here we are today, looking at this and sort of unfolding it and taking it somewhere. But I think one of the things that's really important to your story, Jana, and I think I'd like to just revisit it just a little bit more, is around this whole notion of body awareness to mental awareness to, in a sense, a spiritual awareness is what got you started. And sometimes there's people who've got something that's happened to their body, or there's something that's going with their mind, or something's going in their head that could be entrepreneurial, but they let it slide. You didn't. What was the magic piece in there for you that body, mind, spirit really got you into your business? Can you just unpack that?
For sure. One critical piece for me was, so I knew that when I started feeling different in my own body, because, I mean, the old saying, you don't know what you don't know. Like, I just assumed there was a point in my life where I thought, here were my medications, and I would just continue to take these medications because they help the pain go away. I didn't actually realize that there was another way to help the pain go away, because none of the experts could figure out what was actually wrong. So I just thought, well, there's something wrong. No one can really help me, but this medication is what is going to be kind of my partner for the rest of my life. And I think the body awareness piece, it happened quickly, but it happened in a way that I was second guessing myself. Like, I kept thinking, how could it just be this movement? Because nothing else had changed. My diet hadn't changed. My work hadn't changed. My relationships hadn't changed. So I was questioning it myself. How could it just be learning how to breathe diaphragmatically? How could it be learning to move my spine these different ways? You mean I don't have to go and, run 10 or 15K every day to look and feel healthy? Like, there was lots of questions in my mind. And I think once I started trusting that, no, this wasn't just a fluke, there were some long-term changes. The pain wasn't coming back, even as I started to kind of experiment with, decreasing my dosage of medicine. The other aha moment for me was when I decided to share it with my husband. Now, Jason is a scientist by trade, so spent a lot of time at that point at, standing at a table in a lab. He planted trees in the summers during university. He had a really major accident where he was actually planting trees, and with bags full of trees, stepped through some rotten ground and was air ambulanced out to the hospital, major back issues. And just about this time that I started my Pilates journey and started feeling this in my body, Jason also was going through a lot with his back. And so he was getting very reliant on his pain medication for his back. And one day, as a young wife, I took his pain medication and I threw it away.
Uh,
Because I felt like if it worked for me, why wouldn't it then work for him? So my choice to throw those pills away, and he'll talk about it today and he'll be like kind of ha ha, but then he was very unhappy with me because I made the choice to take away the one thing that could bring him relief from his back pain. I chose it. He didn't choose it. Whereas in my case, I chose to start decreasing my dosage of my medication. I knew he wouldn't do it on his own, or it would take me a long time. So I just thought, let's just rip the Band-Aid. And there was, you know what, there was a lot of unjoyfulness in our home because he was in a lot of pain. But after a while, as I started to work with him and teach him some of the things that I learned, I'll never forget the day that he had a lot of foot issues. Doctors were giving him orthotics, all these kinds of things. And he literally had such a high arch that when he walked on the sand on a beach, you would see his heel and his forefoot. You wouldn't see any other part of the foot. I can remember him yelling my name, and we had hardwood floor on our main floor of our home. And I thought he was hurt the way he was calling my name. And I ran downstairs and I just caught him. He was just barefoot walking around our kitchen. And he said to me, I have never felt this sensation in my body before. Like my foot is interacting with the ground. And we started and he just walked for about 5 minutes. He just walked and felt the hardwood. And we started talking about the back pain and how a lot of it stems from, the disorganization through the feet and that kind of concept. And so for him, it was about a 6-week process where he did have to trust me. There were moments where he did want to go back and at least get some over-the-counter medication. But it was at that point that I knew we were onto something, because it wasn't just, in my head or just fluky. I needed at that point to share it. It became almost like an obsession that I needed to learn more spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally. Things just became clear, like different decisions I had to make. Even just to leave my job in 2008 and start my own, so much of that was Pilates, because my body was organized, my brain could be organized. And when I felt the pull for something different, I didn't question it, because I experienced it. And it doesn't have to be Pilates. It could be like in the book, The E-Myth, they talk about the baker, the woman that was baking pies out of her home, and all her friends were like, oh my gosh, I need more of these pies. And then she opened a bakery. So it doesn't matter what your passion is. I feel like if you've gone through something personally yourself, that is an amazing springboard to potentially, a whole new business that can impact many, many people's lives.
Well, I think the thread through what you're sharing here is the word movement. The movement that you made from your business, from your consulting work to your business, the movement around your own spine, the movement of your husband's feet on the ground, the movement. We sometimes don't take that into consideration, is how important movement is, not only physically, but mentally and spiritually. And I think that's what I loved about your story. And that's why I'm bringing out the word movement. Okay.
Well,
and wealth movement. I love movement.
Well, and I think you're totally right. I think that we can easily, in whatever it is, fill in the blank, in our careers, in a relationship, and we can easily get stuck, because I believe that stuck comes from the area, like our comfort zone. Our comfort zone can make us stuck because it's easy. We know it. And that's exactly, when we go on to part 2 of this, we're going to talk a little bit about the management piece, the M piece. And that's where, when I moved out of my home into our studio, you're right. You're no longer a one-woman or a one-man show. You need the processes, the systems to be able to support where you're growing. And I think a lot of budding entrepreneurs miss that piece, because it's so easy when you're on your own. You have no one but yourself to, you're accountable to you. Your brand is yours. The culture is you. But then you have to start to extend that out to other people. And how does that whole process unfold? And, what are some of the lessons that I learned, and, what brought us to where we are today?
Yeah, another form of movement, right?
Exactly.
Right, you're
Exactly.
moving from that technician kind of storyline to the
Yeah,
manager kind of storyline, and yeah, and that's a really important point. But as we get to wrap up this session, as I always ask everyone that I have a chance to chat with, what's one piece of insight that you would like to share because of this technician storyline that you shared here? What's something you'd like to point in the direction of the world so people can pick up on it right now?
for sure. I would say three little words that work forward and backwards. Confidence creates clarity. And on the other hand, clarity creates confidence. There are going to be many people in your life, probably people who are very close to you, who you trust their opinions of you, especially if you're in something comfortable, right? Like that job where you're getting that paycheck every 2 weeks or every month. Um, there's gonna be a lot of naysayers, and I just feel like as you move from technician to the manager, as long as you have that clarity. And keep in mind, yeah, I mean, yes, do you need maybe a business loan? For sure. Do you need someone to help you make a website? Yeah, there's all those pieces, and we're going to touch on that obviously in the next session. We do. But as long as you have that clarity in your mind of what your vision is, if you can see it, if you can smell it, if you can taste it, you're going to have the confidence to move forward. And on the other hand, if you have that confidence, if you've experienced it, you've started thinking about what is the future that I want to build for myself, the clarity will also be there. And on the other hand, if there's a little bit of fuzziness in some place, take a step back. Get those people, and maybe if you do have a business coach or a confidant, a friend that you're like, what, this is what I'm thinking, but I'm just a little unclear here. Sometimes someone that's a little bit removed from the situation can provide you with that little bit of that little piece of the puzzle that might be missing. Like, okay, I didn't consider that, or no, you're on the right track. This sounds awesome. So that's what I would say. That's the insight. Clarity creates confidence. Confidence creates clarity. Don't ever forget that.
Well, that's great, and it's so true. Clarity, 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 folks. And so we gave a little bit of insight today around this whole notion of the technician aspect, and as Jana mentioned, we're going to go into the manager piece. And for me, stacking this story is really important, okay, because for life and for business. And when you actually take some time out, I will plant this seed, is that if you understand the entrepreneur, manager, technician, then there's really no reason that you're going to call the emergency medical technician to your home or to your business.
You're right, Stephen. Absolutely.
So with that, thanks, Jana, and we'll catch up to the next one. And you'll know that this is going to be a series of three folks. And so we'll get into the manager next. So thanks, Jana.
Thanks, Stephen.